It is semi-finals time at the Australian Open again. The years go quite quickly, but except when it came to this year, it seemed like a long time compared to 2017 to 2018 because I feel like a lot has changed in terms of who is dominating at the top of tennis, which players are winning the biggest titles. But before I start rambling, yes, here we are for our preview and predictions semi-final live stream. I'm not sure if I have the lighting set up a bit different to usual. It was accidental, but I don't really dare mess around with it too much. But hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss any future videos. Thank you for everyone who has subscribed over the past few days, and thank you to everyone keeping up with the latest videos. Now, before I go into previewing and predicting and analysing and that kind of thing, I apologise that every video over the past week and a half has been a live stream. I didn't intend to do this, and I realised that if you go onto the channel page now, you're going to see these videos that are, which isn't what the channel is and isn't what's been for the majority of its life. It will be stopping after the Australian Open, but the thing is, I'm up all night watching the tennis, and I need to sleep at some point. So if I was to pre-record and edit, I just wouldn't have the necessary time. But some of you saying you love the live stream, so thank you. I'm glad that you enjoy them. And if you like them so much, then hopefully we can do more live stream Q&As for the opening rounds of the rest of the slams this year, but making no promises. Depends where we are and what we're doing. So, semi-finals. There will be 3 semi-finals played on Thursday at the Australian Open and 1 semi-final played on Friday. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Australian Open is the only Grand Slam to do this, and every year I don't see the point, but it is what it is. The 2 women's semi-finals and the first of the men's semi-finals will be played on Thursday, with the remaining men's semi-final to be played on Friday. Awesome. Let me know again where you're watching from. Thank you so much to everyone who let me know on the last live stream. It's awesome to see all of you watching from different parts of the world at different times of day. I'm sorry to those for whom this is not a great time, but don't worry, once this is done, it will be left up on the channel page and you can go back and watch and laugh at my incorrect predictions. I don't think we did too badly in the last one. In my quarterfinal preview and predictions, I think I got 5 of 8 correct. And 4 times I was a point away from getting 6 of 2 correct, but more on that later on. Right, how long have we been going? 3 minutes already. Let's get cracking on with this. So, I think we're going to go in order that the matches are going to be played. So, our fantastic Spain, Mallorca, Republic of Georgia, fantastic. Keep these places coming. It's great to see where you all are. So let's go in order of the matches that are scheduled, and that would be starting with the clash between number 8 seed Petra Kvitova back into the semi-finals at the Australian Open for the first time since 2012, and unseeded American Danielle Collins, the 25-year-old former college tennis player. You would not have expected this as a semi-final a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. Even when Kvitova was performing really well ahead of the event and won the title in Sydney, no way on earth you would have predicted this, because usually when Kvitova is performing well ahead of a slam, it's kind of warning signs. She's probably not going to carry this form on, because that's the kind of player Kvitova is. She's lethal, but she's streaky, and she can blow cold during some of her matches. Not being the case so far. She has been absolutely steamrolling through 22 games dropped in total coming into the last 4, so that's imperious from Kvitova. Collins, meanwhile, has fought through some matches, but she's looking confident. She's driving those forehands deep, really hitting with a lot of heavy power. So, rather than me just sitting talking about it, let's go through the actual results. I'll spend a little less time on this because all of the players in the semi-finals, I went in depth on their results up to the quarterfinals in the last video. So we'll just skim over them quickly here. Kvitova, as I said, 22 games dropped with wins over impressive opposition. Magdalena Rybak, her ability to switch things up with the slice, with the squash shots. Irina Camelia Begu, who has been seeded as a slam before. Belinda Bencic, who's really getting back into the form that took her to the top 10. Amanda Anisimova, the 17-year-old from America who strikes with awesome flat power. And Ashley Barty, the Australian, really capable of changing things up. That was a 6-1, 6-4 win for Kvitova, and you'll remember we talked about in the last video how these two had a really tough duel for the Sydney final, and that was a long 3-setter. Kvitova, I mean, this match was a day ago. It feels like a week ago. Days feel like weeks at the moment. But Kvitova, vintage form in that match, and if ever she was going to wobble, I thought it would be there, having had such a streak of good wins behind her. But against Barty, she didn't falter. She knew what was going to be coming at her, the slices from the baseline, Barty approaching the net, and she was ready for it. She was keeping the rally short, whipping winners where other players would have been content to just keep rallying, using her serve very effectively. And yeah, she flew through that first set. Things were closer in the second, but her serve was landing strongly enough for her to keep racing through her service holds, keep holding on. She took her little opportunity at 4-all to break, and then she finished the job. Efficient stuff from the 8th seed. And then over to Danielle Collins, who I've watched substantially less of, but she's been very impressive given that she had never won a match at the Australian Open before, and her Grand Slam experience is minimal. So the 25-year-old started off with an upset of number 14 seed Julia Gerges of Germany. Not a front runner for the title, but Gerges has been in decent form, and Collins was 2 points, 3 points away from defeat in that match. So she was almost out in round 1, and that seems to have given her a new lease of life for the rest of the tournament. Didn't drop a set in her next 3 matches against Sasha Vickery, Caroline Garcia, and number 2 seed Angelique Kerber, a real frontrunner for the title, who Collins absolutely pounded 6-love, 6-2, showing that she can deal with all kinds of game styles here. Gerges hits a fluid shot that reaches the baseline, can get depth on it, she can come forward to the net. Garcia, experienced doubles player as well as singles player. She's got a lot going on in her game. Kerber, a counterpuncher, throwing in the angles, very good on the movement side of things. And yet Collins' confidence and the depth of her game has enabled her to race past all of these players. Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova was a tougher task, and I think this can in part be credit to the fact that it was a later stage of the tournament. I should have this on to make sure it's actually streaming. We're streaming, fab. I mean, you're leaving comments, so, I mean, hopefully. Yeah, Pavlyuchenkova had played 9 quarterfinals of Grand Slams across singles and doubles in her career, not won a single one of them, and that trend continued when she played Collins. And you have to think, when you have been on tour for so long and you're carrying a statistic like that, that has to play on your mind a bit. Even if she didn't know the exact numbers, she would know that she'd not been past this stage at a slam, that she has a lot more experience than Collins on the professional circuit, and that I guess many people would have expected her to win. I believe I predicted Collins. Yes, I did predict Collins, because I just thought the mental pressure would be too much for Pavlyuchenkova. Also, the quality of opposition Collins has come past. However well Pavlyuchenkova was playing this tournament, she didn't hold a candle to the likes of Kerber. So it got tight for Collins. She was making a lot of unforced errors in the first set, which she can't afford to do against Kvitova, because Kvitova, in the form that she's in, if she sustains that, is going to penalise that. But she, squeezed through the tight second set in almost Serena Williams-esque fashion, capitalising on those big moments, because that's what Serena does, and that's what Serena did in her most recent match before things went topsy-turvy, but more on that later on. And then rolled through the last set, 6-1, and Pavlyuchenkova gave her a helping hand, but Collins didn't hold back, even in that last game, going for the forehand winners, going for the backhand winners when Pavlyuchenkova was keeping it close. So that level of confidence is very much needed, and I get the impression that Collins is really staying in the moment and isn't going to stop feeling at ease when she takes on Kvitova. So, let's have a look at some of those specific stats from the most recent matches then. Kvitova with only the 3 aces, but winning 74% of her first serve points against Barty, who's a decent returner and competes really well. They are good numbers. 25 winners to 24 unforced errors, which isn't the most impressive stat in the world, but when you're trying to be as aggressive as Kvitova was, you're going to make a higher number of unforced errors. So managed to keep it a positive differential by 1. So decent from her, more unforced errors from Barty, but the key thing was that Kvitova was so efficient and able to capitalize. Then for Collins, let's have a look. 6 aces matching her opponent, and honestly, a lot of these statistics look quite similar. Collins hit 38 winners, Pavlyuchenkova hit 36, but Collins kept her unforced error count down at 20. Pavlyuchenkova was up at 36 unforced errors, and a lot of Collins' errors came early on in the match, and as it wore on, she was able to cancel them out when it came to the pressure situations. And 9 more total points won from Collins, so even though it was a 3 sets match, she was in the driver's seat by the end of that one. So, head-to-head between these two players, they faced off once before, and it was a recent collision because it came in Brisbane in the first week of competition this year. To make things even more interesting, it was a tight 3-set clash. Collins actually led by a set and was close to edging out the match in the second set tiebreak, but Kvitova hung tough and came through 6-7, 7-6, 6-3. Both of the tiebreak scores were 8-6. So you can see the contrast of Kvitova's slicker, flatter power and Collins' heavy top-spinning power, really pushing each other there. 2 players who came into the season really confidently, and for Collins to have really pushed Kvitova there and then to come in and take it to the top players she's faced like she has is really, really good. So that scoreline and the form of both players in this event hints that this could well be a close one. But I'm going to try not to ramble as much as I did in the last video, because even though we have half the number of matches to cover, I did go on for a while, and people watching on catch-up are not going to want to watch an hour and a half. So let's try and make a quick prediction here. Collins has dropped the couple of sets more than Kvitova, who obviously hasn't dropped a set coming in. I'm looking at those scorelines again, and it's fantastic. Hasn't dropped more than 4 games in this set. For Kvitova, who finds it hard to string matches together where she's absolutely drilling her opponents. That's great stuff, and it's confidence boosting stuff. And you could see on court when she was so emotional when she was asked in her interview about reaching this first Grand Slam semi-final since that horrific knife attack a couple of years ago. You can see how much it means to her and how much that situation fired her up and gave her this new perspective. She started to really embrace and enjoy tennis, and she's got that competitive fire as well. So she's really pumped up on court, Kvitova, with the massive screams when she executes a good winner and gets a key point in the match. So you know what? Collins has the confidence and she has the game to do damage, as she's proved against Kvitova. And I wouldn't be surprised at an upset here, even though it would mean that Collins goes into the final. But I think there are some key stats to look at. Some of you, if you follow me on Twitter and have followed my work, will know that I keep a keen eye on the women's draw at the Australian Open every year, because I've noted that every year since 2013, usually a slightly younger player makes their Grand Slam breakthrough at the Australian Open with a semi-final run. In 2013, it was Sloane Stephens, 2014, Eugenie Bouchard, 2015, Madison Keys, 2016, Johanna Konta, 2017, Coco Vandeweghe, 2018, Elise Mertens, and 2019, it's Danielle Rose Collins. So that has been a theme that has continued, and another theme of all of those players. Many of them have gone on to even better results, some of them not having the best time right now, but the common theme for each of those players as well was that they didn't get past the semi-finals. All of them lost in that semi-final stage, and I'm not superstitious or anything, but I just think that Collins has had a good run, but if Kvitova sustains her current form, she's getting through. So I'm going to predict Petra Kvitova to win this match and reach the final, and I'll predict her to do it in straight sets, because if Collins comes out making unforced errors again, then, but then, you know, Collins is so talented that she could actually make it close, and she realizes that she's different, and I think this gives Collins the ability relaxed when she's playing because she's had other the players that we see on tour now have been young prodigies when they were younger. Collins has gone through college tennis, gone to university because she wasn't sure of her ability. She didn't know if she would be able to make it as a pro, which she talks about quite candidly. And you can see the difference between Collins and other players, even in her press conferences. Most tennis players have this air around them. And I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but they kind of talk in a certain way in their press conferences without meaning to. It's just something that tennis players pick up. And they say certain things. And it's almost kind of clichéic, if that's even a word, cliches in what they say. Whereas Collins, she's quite articulate, she's very individual, and I know some people think she's quite arrogant and she's rubbed them up the wrong way, but she's very unique and true to herself, I think. And I think that's helped her because she knows that she's different and she's embracing that, and she's going out there and leaving everything on court, not seeming to feel any pressure on her shoulders. This is a phenomenal run for her, and if she plays with that mentality that she's got nothing to lose, she could make this very close. So, you know what, I can't predict a set score. Who cares about set scores anyway? I'm predicting Petra Kvitova, whether it's in straight sets or 3 sets. I think that Kvitova will edge this one. So that's the first match. Then we move on to... Oh boy, I'm dreading talking about this one before I've even started, because what drama to create this matchup. We've got Naomi Osaka, defending US Open champion, 4th seed in Melbourne, against Karolina Pliskova, 7th seed in Melbourne. Open finalist, she made that stage in 2016. She's been world number 1, never yet bagged a Grand Slam title, and that final at the US Open was the only Grand Slam final that she has reached to date. So, let's have a look at this one. We're starting with Osaka because if you know what's happened, that's just easier, the easiest thing to start with. So, where is she? Naomi Osaka. Here we are. She's played 5 matches, obviously. She's dropped 2 sets, and they both came in rounds 3 and 4. Easy starts against two fairly laid-back opening matches, let's say that. I mean, every Grand Slam match is tough, but with the form Osaka's in, she got through those first matches with pretty much no problem. Then she came up against Su Wei-Shea and Anastasia Sevastova, who, if you remember, we talked about them having more of a, not necessarily counter-punching game style, although you could say that they're more on that side of things, but they're slicing a lot, they're drop-shotting, they are using craft as opposed to power a lot of the time. Sevastova's got some lovely fluid ground strokes, yes, but she can also, you know, throw in some variety, which I don't think she did as well as she could have done in the latter stages against Osaka. Was kind of hitting and hoping cross courts a lot of the time from what I remember. But yeah, Osaka pushed around the court by those 2 players, made to move, made to think, and after losing the first set in both clashes, she came through in 3 sets. That set her up for a meeting with Alina Svitolina, the 6th seed, and this one looks close on paper because they had a close head-to-head record. Svitolina was coming into this season off winning the WTA finals, beating a good range of players to do that. I believe she won with a 5-love record, which is the first time that's happened in a while, so credit to her. Osaka, obviously, with the big serve, the powerful ground strokes, and a great feel for the ball this tournament. Svitolina, an absolute fighter and very intense when she's rallying. So, it was hard to call this one. I do think I went with Osaka in the end because, as I've said previously, ahead of this tournament, my instinctive picks to win, I had 3 players I thought might win. The first was Serena Williams, the second was Angelique Kerber, and the other was Naomi Osaka. And one of them's still in, and it's this girl. So a 6-4, 6-1 win for Osaka, which her coach, Sasha Bayan, on Twitter afterwards dubbed flawless. But she did hit 25 unforced errors, so I'm questioning that one. Are we redefining the word here? But, you know, I get his meaning in that Osaka played like a long-time professional, like a player who has been at the top of this sport for 5 or 6 years, not a player who hadn't really broken through at this point last year. She's so focused and collects herself really well in the big moments at these particular events, and she showed that she could do that against Svitolina. I don't think she played her best quality tennis in the opening set, and honestly, I'm almost forgetting how this match played out, because it was the first match of the day, the first of many hours of no sleep, and her serving was good, Osaka. She was serving strong. Svitolina rallying intensely, but Osaka just, like Kvitova in a way, finding those winners and going for them with the off forehand, approaching the net when other players would be content to just kind of keep rallying. She was really backing herself. And yeah, she was nailing those corners with the forehand, very precise. There were some long rallies where she and Svitolina were kind of pushing each other around, and it was often Osaka coming out on top. But the key thing from Osaka for me was the position she was standing in to return second serves. Svitolina herself was coming in a bit for the second serves, but Osaka was standing a couple of feet inside the baseline. I haven't really seen a player do that so consistently and so bluntly and obviously since Serena Williams did that kind of thing all the time in 2013. That she would intimidate her opponents so much by literally taking large steps into destroy their second serves, which is what Osaka was doing. She was actually managing quite a lot of return winners. So yeah, I think despite the number of unforced errors she had, that was a good showing from Osaka, an efficient showing, and the strength of her serve and the way she backed that up. She was consistent from the mid-court. The way she was able to read the ball in order to wrong foot Svitolina and all that kind of thing was very impressive, and weapons that I think will serve her well against Pliskova. If we go to the stats for this particular match, 8 aces for Osaka to 0 double faults. 21% of first serves in. She'll want to up that. She won more than 50% of her second serve points. Had 13 breakpoint opportunities to Svitolina's 4. So that shows how consistent she was on the serve and how much she was attacking the return. Yes, she only converted 5 of the 13, but you know, she had those opportunities, and it's something that she can draw confidence from. 31 winners to 25 unforced errors, so a decent differential. And then if you compare her 31 winners to the 11 winners of Svitolina, you can tell whose racket the match was on. And it's always going to be the case with a counterpuncher and a power player, especially one of Osaka's quality. If the power player is finding their mark, if they're playing anywhere close to their best tennis, it's on their racket, and it certainly was for Osaka. So that is Naomi Osaka's side of things. Ooh, and then on to Karolina Pliskova, who was 5-1 and match point down in the final sets against Serena Williams and came through and won. And I think the entire tennis world was shocked. At the time, I was taking match notes on every single point of the match. I did it for both women's matches. I struggled in the end with the men's because I was shattered at that point. But literally for the Williams-Pliskova match, I charted the whole thing myself. So I knew as I was watching it that there was a logical explanation for why everything was happening. But throughout the day, the more I've thought about this results, and the more I've thought about the fact that Serena Williams, a decent informed Serena Williams, lost from 5-1 and match point up on serve, it is a little bit shocking to me when I forget about the context of how it happened. So I'll talk about that a bit now. We knew this upset was possible. Forget how it happened. We 100% knew it was possible because Pliskova's done this before. During her amazing US Open run, she did beat Venus and Serena in the same tournament, saved match point to beat Venus, and then took Serena down in straights, I believe, in the semi-finals. A complete lack of intimidation. Pliskova really backs herself. She really has so much self-confidence, which I think is built around the fact she has such a massive first serve, and when she's nailing that, there is so it's completely on her racket, and you just do sense a lot of self-confidence around her a lot of the time. She's very focused on herself, not necessarily on the opponent, on what the opponent is doing, as some of her comments after the match showed, but very much has a focus on what she's doing, how she's executing what she needs to do. And she opened the match incredibly well, serving big. She'd made just 3 unforced errors in her previous round when she beat... Who did she beat? 3 unforced errors. Let's have a look, because I should have gone through her previous matches. Garbine Muguruza. So, before I actually go into how Pliskova won that match, I should probably quickly go through her matches to date, which I did do in the last video. But early rounds, no indication that she would bring this form to face Serena. 6-3, 6-2 in the first round, decent, but she lost the set to Madison Brengel in the second round before coming back to thrash her in the next 2 sets. Camilla Giorgi, the hot and cold Italian, caused her trouble in the third round, but 3-set win for Pliskova. Garbine Muguruza had played her way back into form by the fourth round, but a 6-3, 6-1 thrashing from Pliskova with 3 unforced errors showed that Pliskova had come to play. She was in the zone, and the thing that Pliskova has always found hard is maintaining that consistency across matches, because like Kvitova in a way, when she's on fire, she's lethal, but she finds it incredibly hard to be on fire all the time, as any human being would. So coming into face Serena, there were question marks as to whether she would be able to bring that level, but I feel like when players do go into face Serena, even when it's a player like Pliskova, who obviously has expectations for herself, she's a former world #1, she's come close to winning a Grand Slam title, it was 3 sets against Kerber in that US Open final, they do play as if they have nothing to lose, and that's exactly what Pliskova did. So going back to the match at hand, she came out blazing, nailing her serves, especially the wide serves doing damage from Pliskova's side of the court. There were some long side-to-side rallies, and Serena was hitting her backhand well and hitting deep, and Pliskova was just devouring the pace. She was enjoying it. She was loving it. It was right in her strike zone. And the difference from Serena's side of the net was Pliskova was hitting very quick and very flat and very fast. And Serena was almost struggling to get down to that consistently enough in order to place the ball where she wanted it. So Serena was playing, in general, her backhand was deep and precise and all-round good for the most part, but she was playing with a lot more margin than Pliskova was. Pliskova was playing incredibly close to the lines. She was the one striking the wrong-footing winners. She was the one going for the winners out of nowhere on neutral balls. And Serena was missing her T-serve, which was a massive thing for her because the T-serve was the serve that was going to do damage, drag Pliskova, and then set her up for the 1-2 punch. Also, her forehand was a massive liability in the first set. She couldn't land it cross-court to save her life at some points. So Pliskova, credit to her, absolutely dominated on serve in that set, came through. And then it was pretty close in the second set. Towards the back end of it, Serena suddenly found her T-serve. She was playing better on the forehand, making sure she was hitting more backhands as well. Following up to the net, she was coming forward more often and more immediately, I think, when she saw her chances. But I think Pliskova did drop off a bit when she was a set and a break up, because at the beginning of the set, Serena was still struggling, and then Pliskova broke for the set and a break lead. I think it was 6-4, 4-2, and then it was like deer in the headlights moment, and she played one poor game and Serena was on it. Serena only needs one little bit of an opportunity, one tiny crack in the door, and she will yank it open, and that's what she did. Pliskova bringing an incredibly high standard, but Serena sneaking through that set by breaking to take it. And from there, it was like a film or a movie, if you're American, that we've all seen before. She, the comeback queen, as she was once known, took the second set and started to roll through the decider. Pliskova was getting pushed around a lot more. She wasn't as lethal. She wasn't going for as much. In her words, and this is very accurate, she became quite passive. She was letting Serena kind of bully her a bit. And Serena was taking it. She was stepping up, and she seemed to have this quiet, confident assurance that she was going to come through, because we've seen her do it a million times. It's what she does. And so it looked that way until 5-1, 40-30 when Serena hit a serve, which some people call it an ace, but I mean, it was towards Pliskova's body, kind of. So even though Pliskova was slightly going the wrong way, I think she could have stuck a racket out, got her racket on it, whether it was an unreturnable or whether she'd have hit a short return, I'm not sure. But the fact is that Serena was called for a foot fault. And at that point in time, Serena's not going to try and dispute a call. She's 5-1 up, who cares? So Serena serves again. There's a short, neutral-ish exchange, I guess. Not too long, not too short. And it finishes with Pliskova wrong-footing Serena with a forehand into the ad court. And Serena slightly adjusts to try and go after the ball, and she ever so slightly rolls her ankle. Now, a lot of angry Serena fans have not been happy with the way I described that. I call it as I see it. It wasn't a massive roll. She didn't go over. It was just a little bit of a roll. Something happened. It was obvious. But we know that it only takes something small to cause a problem. And Serena bent down and felt her ankle, and you got this feeling that something might be up. She then double faulted, put a backhand error into the net. Pliskova had broken, and from that moment on, Pliskova decided to play lights out tennis once again, going for the winners, nailing them, and Serena going for the winners herself too early and missing. And Pliskova won the match, 7-5 in the third. I mean, I could go into all sorts of detail on this one, but if you're watching this video, you probably know the story. So Pliskova, insane effort from her, not to give up, down 5-1, match point on the return. Well, her return, she's returning, obviously. Match point on Serena's serve with Serena Williams standing across the net. That takes a lot of mental strength. And that was really good from Pliskova, like, seriously. And whatever happened on Serena's side of the net, I think she deserves all the credit, because she started off on fire and she finished on fire. Whatever else was happening, she was, as Serena put it herself, playing lights out tennis. So, what to say? But before I go on and make the prediction for Pliskova versus Osaka and talk a bit more about that, I want to say that Serena, obviously, in her press conference, played down the whole ankle issue and said that it wasn't an issue, gave the credit to Pliskova. Good on her. Pliskova deserves all the credit, because that was a mammoth achievement, what she did, and she went after it. But I think it was a mix of factors, because even Serena doesn't know what was wrong with her ankle because she didn't get the trainer on. She said that she didn't feel like she was in a position where she needed to. Well, obviously she didn't, because she was 5-1 up. In any normal match, in any normal situation, even if Serena wasn't playing her best, she would somehow find a way to force out a match point and get the win. So, which is, in a way, it's what told you that something wasn't quite right, because this just wouldn't happen to the normal Serena. However well her opponent was playing, a 5-1 deficit is just massive. But she didn't win one more point on serve after she rolled her ankle. And you could see that she wasn't launching up into it quite as much. She was trying to finish those points early, which indicated that she wasn't as comfortable moving as she was before. Probably indicated nerves as well. I pretty much knew it was over for her at 5-3 when I could hear her grunting in the way that she had in the first set, where she was kind of forcing the ball as opposed to feeling it and going for more precision over power. Which is what she adjusted to in the second set. That's what she was changing up and doing a bit more. So, yeah, I think it was a mix of factors. A, Pliskova playing insanely, and B, Serena having, whether it was nerves, whether it was the ankle, whether it was a mix of both, which I think it probably was. She was probably distracted by the thought of what she might have done, distracted by the thought of the match point she'd missed. There were a number of factors, but at the end of the day, Pliskova got the win. But it was important for me to mention that coming into my prediction and explaining why I'm predicting the way I am, because I think I know which way I'm going in this one. So, Pliskova comes through 6-4, 4-6, 7-5 if I didn't actually get around to saying the score there. Sorry for the ramble on that, but it's a big result. It needs covering. Pliskova leads a head-to-head with Osaka 2-1. And if I'm correct, which I am, they last played in the final of Tokyo at the end of last season when Osaka had looked in really good form, actually. This was in the Asian swing, so it was just after she'd won the US Open title, and she kind of liked the fact that she had another tournament to focus on, Osaka, after the drama and everything that surrounded the US Open. So she was playing really well, and I think a lot of people thought she was going to win that. But then out came Pliskova with a big serve, flat ground strokes. Osaka's movement was challenged. One more thing on Pliskova, her movement was fantastic against Serena for the majority of the match, and it was probably the best I've seen her move. But anyway, so Pliskova got that win in the Tokyo final 6-4, 6-4. Their meeting prior to that came at Indian Wells, which was Naomi Osaka's first WTA title and the place where she truly broke out last year. Fairly comprehensive to Osaka, 6-2, 6-3. So that's kind of confusing because you've got 2 matches there, both played last year, and both going straight sets, one to one player and one to the other. So it doesn't really help us out much when predicting this. Both of them were on hard courts as well. Pliskova's win was indoors, which I guess makes a bit of a difference. Before that, they played once at the what do you call it on the premier mandatory event in Canada that switches between Montreal and Toronto. They played there, and Pliskova won, but it was via retirement in the 3rd set. So, hard to draw stuff from the head-to-head, apart from to say that obviously both of them have quality games, and if they both produce those quality games simultaneously, this one could be very close. Can see it going 3. And let's cut to the chase, shall we? I am going to predict Naomi Osaka to win this match, and the reason I'm going to do that is because however well Pliskova played against Serena, and she was phenomenal to actually come through and get that win in the end, she did need Serena to open the door. She played a fantastic match. She played lights out tennis in the first set, and yet she was on the brink of losing the final set 6-1, and who knows if things hadn't happened to Serena on the other end of the court, she might well have lost that match. So despite the high quality Pliskova produced, she was still nearly on her way out. Osaka, meanwhile, maybe hasn't produced that lightning tennis, that clinical ability off the serve and the forehand, etc., that Pliskova produced against Serena, but she's been very good at getting over her unforced errors, at reading the ball correctly in the right moments. She's not been clinical, but she's had that big moment mentality. She's had that big moment mentality that you see in the top players time and time again. And I think this is why the only 2 WTA titles that she's won have been at Indian Wells and the US Open, one of the Grand Slams and then the biggest event outside of the Grand Slams, because she's made for these big tournaments. And she's got more of them in her future. She definitely has more big titles in her future, and one of them could be just around the corner. So I am going to predict, for the sake of thinking that she will sustain her consistency and come through in the big moments, Naomi Osaka to win. And I don't want to predict a set score, but I saw someone say in the comments that you want set scores. So I'm going to go with Naomi Osaka in... I'm taking too long. This is why I pre-record. I can sit here for as long as I want and think of a prediction, and you won't have a clue how long I've taken over it. Sometimes I do it on the spot, but Naomi Osaka to win in straight sets, because I want to say 3 sets, but my gut's actually saying straight, so let's just go with it because I never do. Straight sets for Osaka. Okay, moving on to the men then, and the first men's match that will be played tomorrow, which is probably today for some, if you're watching in Australia. Hi, thanks for being up early if you're there. Yeah, Rafael Nadal, the number 2 seed, the former champion, against rising star Stefanos Tsitsipas, the number 14 seed, world number 15, who knocks out Roger Federer in the 4th round, backs that up with a win over Roberto Bautista Agut in the quarterfinals, a man who was very in form and looks quite ready to take on Nadal. So let's have an in-depth look at these two. I think we'll look at Stefanos Tsitsipas first. And you wouldn't have predicted in his first rounds that this was going to be the big one for Tsitsipas, who won the Next Gen Finals last year. Interestingly, because Hyun Chung, who reached the semi-finals here last year, won the Next Gen Finals, the first edition of the event. So keep an eye on who wins the Next Gen Finals, because much as I'm not a fan of the event itself, maybe it predicts the future. Who knows? Maybe it predicts better than I do, which is highly probable. Okay. Suddenly thought the sound was on there. Right, yes, Tsitsipas. Can't keep my train of thought at the moment. Hasn't won a match in straight sets yet, and yet is still going into the semi-finals. So credit to him. He's completed all 5 of his matches so far in 4 sets. So started off against Berrettini, 2 tie breaks in that match. He won the last one of them after losing the first set tie break. Came through 6-7, 6-4, 6-3, 7-6. Then a win over Victor Troicki, who fairly experienced, very experienced. 6-3, 2-6, 6-2, 7-5. Nicolas Basilashvili in the next round, the 19th seed, who was in decent form here in Australia, beat some decent opponents. 6-3, 3-6, 7-6, 9-7 in a tiebreak. Key that he's edging these close tiebreaks. 6-4. And then onto his match with Roger Federer, which we've already discussed, so I'm not going into detail on it again. But he came to the net, he was showing a lot of confidence, they were kind of throwing a lot at each other, and Tsitsipas showing how much Federer has inspired his game style and coming big in the key moments. 6-7, 11-13, 7-6, 7-5, 7-6. So very close and incredibly impressive that he was able to be there in the big moments. And then perhaps more impressive, the way he was able to back it up against Roberto Bautista Agut, a man who's in form, was on a 9-match winning streak, I think, coming into this, having won a title to open his season and then made the quarterfinals. Bautista Agut, very consistent on the back foot, top spinning a lot more than Federer, striking a different kind of ball. Coming to the net when he needs to, but really being able to turn it around well from behind. And yet Tsitsipas 7-5, 4-6, 6-4, 7-6. And it would have been easy to panic a little bit in that tie break, because tie breaks in the 4th set are one of the worst things to happen, because you can have been doing so well on that set, and in a moment it can go into a 5th, and if you had the momentum in the 4th set and didn't come away with that set, it can be very easy to get down and go down quickly in that 5th set. So key for Tsitsipas that he was able to take that. He was looking strong in that match, but we'll go into specific stats after we've had a quick look at no, actually let's look at those stats now. I can't make my mind up. I can make a load of excuses, but I'm not going to bother. So Tsitsipas, 22 aces, showing there how key that shot is. He's going to need it to be as good against Nadal. 22 aces, but actually only 57% of first serves in. Now, for an entire match, you would expect Bautista Agut to punish that a bit more. That's not an impressive stat, so probably good for him that it's come at this stage, because he was able to get through that match in 4 sets, and now he sees what he needs to work on coming in to face Nadal. So only 3 double faults compared to 22 aces, which is decent. He had 11 breakpoint opportunities to Bautista Agut's 4, showing his strength on serve again, and showing how he was trying to make an impact on the return. 68 winners to Roberto Bautista Agut's 50, and 38 unforced errors, so he hit, if my maths is correct, which is always questionable, 30 more winners than unforced errors, which is a pretty decent differential, if you ask me. So good stuff from Tsitsipas, and I think I predicted Bautista Agut to get the win there. It doesn't help that Tsitsipas is probably one of the players I've watched least this fortnight. I've watched him a lot as he's developed throughout his career, but haven't seen much of him during the Australian Open, which I need to put right and catch up a little bit. But yeah, it's just really impressive that he was able to go from a top player like Federer with Federer's style to a player like Roberto Bautista Agut, who's not as high profile, having come through the mental and physical test of beating Federer and then be able to back that up. I was a little bit skeptical at first, and now I can absolutely say that yes, this is a breakthrough tournament for Tsitsipas. Whatever happens now, whether he loses to Nadal or whether he makes a magnificent run into the final, this is where things really start for him. This could be a springboard to further success over the next few months. So, yeah, that's Tsitsipas. And then on to Rafael Nadal, who, in contrast to Tsitsipas' 5 4-set wins, has 5 straight sets wins. He has been looking pretty phenomenal, Nadal, especially on serve. So, 3 wins over Aussies to open things up. James Duckworth, Matthew Ebden, Alex de Minaur, each of them throwing something a bit different at Nadal. Duckworth bringing the serve and volleying. Ebden quite consistent from the back of the court. Alex de Minaur, oh, so speedy, really ripping the firepower on some of his shots, executing some great stuff, but never on the points that really counted. Nadal was just always hanging in there, waiting for his moment and taking it. So 6-4, 6-3, 7-5 over Duckworth, 6-3, 6-2, 6-2 over Ebden, and 6-1, 6-2, 6-4 over 27th seed de Minaur, who he also beat via that scoreline at Wimbledon. That led into a meeting with Thomas Berdych, and the Czech had beaten Nadal in the 2015 quarterfinals here without losing a set. And Nadal thrashed him 6-love, 6-1, 7-6 against a big serving opponent as well. That's really positive for Nadal because there were a number of years where he was really struggling with the big servers. It's not a great environment here to face them in, but to be able to get that sort of scoreline against Berdych, who was really coming back to form, is very impressive. And then the 6-3, 6-4, 6-2 win over Frances Tiafoe, which I watched the entirety of, but it feels like a year ago because it was last night and so much has happened since then. So let's have a look at the stats, shall we? Stats for Tiafoe versus Nadal. Now, Tiafoe made a statement now, I'm remembering it, early on, his first point of the match, big serve, firepower, came up to the net, but Nadal pinpointed him there and he went into the net. So the match was really a story of Tiafoe's potential and ability, his ability to hit the firepower, his ability to land big serves, but the way Nadal was able to be that much better and to take what he was doing well and turn it against him. And it was getting Tiafoe down a bit. The forehand was keeping him at bay, holding him back with the topspin, and you never really know what you're up against with Nadal until you're there on court. That's what a lot of players have said. You've watched him, you know what he can do, but you never truly know what it feels like until you've stood on the opposite baseline. And that forehand is a very unique shot in this game, and Tiafoe knew it was dangerous, and Nadal was just landing too many of them for him to make a real impact. 13 aces for Tiafoe, 11 for Nadal, but it goes much further than the service stats. They landed a similar number of first serves, but Nadal won 14% more of those first serves than Tiafoe did. 0 breakpoints converted by Tiafoe and only 2 breakpoint opportunities. Nadal, meanwhile, 8 breakpoint opportunities, 4 of them converted. Net points, Nadal winning the vast majority, 9 of 11 compared to Tiafoe's 4 of 11. So when Nadal is making that approach, he's doing so efficiently, and it's often coming as a follow-up to the work he's done at the baseline. He's not necessarily going to rush in and do a serve and volley, for example. He's gonna move up to the net and finish things off, essentially, and that shows that he's very clinical in doing that. Winners, 29 for Nadal, 25 for Tiafoe. Key numbers of the unforced errors, 23 for Nadal, could be lower, and 34 for Tiafoe. And that was the main criticism I think I had of Nadal. Towards the end of the match, he was throwing in more unforced errors, and it was his serve and his forehand that were kind of keeping him on top. So he's definitely going to want to cancel those errors against Tsitsipas, who is looking incredibly confident. And do excuse me while I take a short break. So, Nadal versus Tsitsipas. Let's have a look at this head-to-head. Yeah, 2 wins to love for Nadal in the head-to-head. And I think both both came quite recently. Both of them came last year. There was a meeting on clay and a meeting on hard court, and both meetings were in finals, which I think is key here because it shows it was a high pressure, high intensity situation, and both times Nadal was by far able to deal better with that. Not only were they straight sets wins, but 3 of the 4 sets contested were fairly comprehensive. In the Barcelona final, Nadal steamrolled to a 6-2, 6-1 win, which is understandable because clay isn't Tsitsipas' greatest surface, and Nadal dominates that surface. As anyone who watches tennis will know, hashtag king of clay. So 6-2, 6-1 there for Nadal, so I mean, shows that he was on his happiest hunting grounds. And then the Canada Masters final they competed at, and Nadal came through 6-2, 7-6 on that occasion, with a 7-4 scoreline in the tiebreak. So closer there. Tsitsipas obviously having had the experience of facing Nadal on a big stage before. So Tsitsipas will be hoping that it's a constant progression of getting closer. But, you know, Nadal has been clinical at Grand Slams recently, and it's hard to remember this sometimes because he had to withdraw from 2 of his last 4. Both hardcourt Grand Slams last year, Nadal was forced to retire from. And then Wimbledon and the French Open, obviously he won the French Open, went to the semi-finals of Wimbledon, and was on the brink of victory before Novak Djokovic snatched it from his grasp. So, Nadal very efficient at the Grand Slams at present, as was Serena Williams before she got upset. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I read, and I was surprised by this, doubling back briefly, that, because this is an interesting stat, which I somehow remembered, Serena hadn't lost before the semi-finals of a slam since she lost to Sloane Stephens at the Australian Open in 2013. Which is mad if you look at that time span. I mean, we knew she was consistent, but stats like this show you just how consistent. That's 6 years. And the interesting thing, which is why I wanted to mention this in the video, was it was the 23rd of January when Serena made that last loss to Stephens, and today, or the day of her defeat to Pliskova, was the 23rd of January too. So, just a nice stat for you. But anyway, what were we talking about? Nadal, Tsitsipas, yes. So I do think Nadal has the upper hand here, and I am going to look silly if Tsitsipas comes through and makes the final, because I didn't give him a fair enough chance against Bautista Agut, even though I didn't predict it in straight sets. But I just think Nadal is different. I mean, Bautista Agut is a decent preparation for playing Nadal, because he's a Spaniard that plays with a lot of topspin, that's comfortable on the back foot, that doesn't mind moving up to the net, that's going to make him play a lot of balls. But Nadal is just that much better. He's been pretty much impeccable on serve. His serve has been the strongest that I've seen it in a long time, not just by way of landing the spin serve and using variety, not just by way of coming through with it in the big moments, but the fact that it's been, I think, consistently harder and more powerful than it's been in a while, Nadal. And he did have that new service motion, obviously, coming into the tournament, which seems to have maybe had an effect. So on this occasion, I think Tsitsipas has had a brilliant tournament. I think that it's the next step for him to greater things. Maybe it will involve a shock Australian Open title, but on this occasion I think I'd be stupid to back against Nadal, and I'm going to go with Rafael Nadal to win this match. And because of Tsitsipas' great form and the fact he loves 4-set matches at the moment, I'm going to pick Nadal to win this one in 4 sets. So, how are we doing? Nearly an hour, and we've done 3 matches. Not too bad. Not sure we'll finish in under an hour, but we could be thereabouts. Okay, hope you're not bored. How's it going, guys? Enjoying the video? Lots of chat going on. This is good. I will read back at the end. Right, Novak Djokovic, the top seed, the 6-time former champion, and my personal pick for champion ahead of the events. He takes on Luca Pouille. Who was expecting that one? The Frenchman who had never made a Grand Slam semi-final before. He's here. He's in the semis, and credit to him because he's played some brilliant tennis to do that just when I thought personally that he must be getting tired. He pulled another brilliant performance out of the bag. So let's get straight into this then. Let's start with Oh, where are my tabs that I opened? I spent ages setting this up before I came on. Not necessarily thinking through what I was going to say, because I never do anymore, but getting these little results pages open for you. Okay, let's start with Pui then, and his run to this stage, which few expected to happen. If you've been watching the recent live streams, you will have noticed that I had a lot of faith in Raonic. He was playing incredibly well. Big serves, following it up to the net, great volleys, and from the start against Nick Kyrgios, Stan Wawrinka, he had a tough draw. He beat Kyrgios, Wawrinka, Zverev to make the quarterfinals. Raonic did. He was the number 16 seed, ranked higher than Pui, and he just looks in a great groove. And I'll come to it shortly, but he did go to pieces a little bit at the beginning against Pui, and I think it cost him. But Luca Pui himself, a 6-1, 7-5, 6-4 win over Mikhail Kukushkin, who's been trouble for the top players in the past in the first round. Maximilian Martyra pushed him close, 10-8, 10-8 in the first two tie breaks, both of which Pui won. He then lost the third set 5-7, but rebounded to win in 4 sets there. 5-set win over Alexei Popyrin in the third round. What a match that was. Popyrin really won me over this tournament. Big serve, deep ground strokes, control at the net, etc., etc. I'm like a stuck record, but 2 sets to live up, Pui, and he lost the next 2 sets, like he did to Gael Monfils here last year, and then he lost that match in 5, but this time righted the wrong of the year before, in a way. Almost, I guess that was a big win for him, because in his mind, obviously, you're going to carry horrendous memories of matches that you lost from 2 sets to live up, because away from the Grand Slams, that's technically a victory. But he was able to get on the right end of the scoreline this time, and I think that was really big for him mentally, even though Popyrin isn't like the highest ranked player, even though he's not the most accomplished player. I think that was really confidence boosting for Pui, because he found himself in that situation that he'd been in a year ago, and he was able to change the results despite the fact he wasn't in great form coming into this tournament, despite the fact he hasn't done anything notable in a long time. And credit to Amelie Mauresmo, who has now joined his coaching team, because whatever she's been doing, it's working. So on to a 4-set victory over Borna Coric, who can play some great tennis, was looking at a very opportune road to a maiden quarter-final at this tournament, and Pui put those dreams to bed for the Croat. And then the win over Raonic, 7-6, 6-3, 6-7, 6-4. And impressive in several aspects for Pui. I did manage to watch the majority of this match before succumbing to sleep, because at this point it's just impossible to do an all-nighter, knowing that I can't afford to sleep during the day as well. Yeah, he started off well. Raonic rolled out to a 3-love lead that I remember, and was looking comfortable, but then he got really shaky, and he wasn't landing the first serve as well. He was making some uncharacteristic unforced errors, and Pui was just there with the forehand. He was unleashing his own serve, and I think the most important thing was that he was pinpointing Raonic at the net. Raonic has been so strong on the serve and following that up, often serve and volleying, coming forwards and executing the volley winners, backing up his service bombs. He's been so consistent in that department that it's been hard actually for players, even though they know what's coming, to do anything about it. But the moment his first serve percentage dropped, Pui was there to A, often keep him on the baseline and not give him the opportunity to come up to the net, and B, when he was at the net, pinpoint him and either force him into the error or drive a pass beyond his reach. And it was impressive from Pui, really impressive. If we go to those stats, you can see just how much damage he did. Let's go to those stats right now, because, let me find it. Let's look at the net point stats for Raonic. Okay, so the net point stats for Raonic, he approached the net 81 times. He only won 47 of those points, which, okay, yes, is still a massive number, but it's nothing on what he was producing earlier in the tournament. That's a 58% conversion rate. 58% of those points won. Pui, meanwhile, wasn't afraid of coming to the net, and he won 63% of those points. He came to the net 24 times and won 15 of them. Winners, very close, 62 for Pui, 59 for Raonic. Unforced errors tell the difference. Pui, 24, Raonic 34, and his unforced errors came at the worst times. In fact, I think that Raonic kind of ended it for himself in the second set, and he did, yes, have the opportunity to come back, because we've seen a lot of five-setters in this tournament. In the second set, his first serve was down at 38%, and he was winning 38% of those first serve points. That's just not good enough against a player like Pui, who was finding his zone, who was pumped up for the occasion, who was ripping the forehand and nailing the sidelines, who was predicting and anticipating the serve and nailing passing shots, who was really stepping up to control, and was all around just playing a lot more of a solid match than Raonic. So, a good win for Pui, and also positive that even though he did drop that fourth set, he was able to come back, third set, sorry, he was able to come back and win in 4 all the same. So, that's Pui. It's getting warm here. That's not what I expected, because it's Great Britain and it's been snowing during the Australian Open. It's not the first time it's happened either. You just feel so far away from Melbourne when you see the sun there and the snow here. That's how it goes. Right. Novak Djokovic, the front runner, I guess. The man that many people were calling for the win ahead of the tournament. He was, I mean, there's not much to say really about his quarterfinal, but let's go through his run anyway. Mitchell Carrega, the qualifier from America, made him work a bit in the first round, but 6-3, 6-2, 6-2 for the Serb. Jo-Wilfried Tsonga had all the tools to make him panic and put him in some danger in the second round, but Djokovic just by far the more consistent there. 6-3, 7-5, 6-4. The snow is annoying, right? I have to drive in it. I mean, it's pretty, it's nice when it's coming down, but when you know you have to go out in it and it's lethal, not fun. And it wasn't fun for Tsonga either. 6-3, 7-5, 6-4 down to Djokovic. Denis Shapovalov, more of a challenge. The one-handed backhand, his all-court energy, ability to come forwards. Oh, snow everywhere. What's it like, guys? Anyone in Melbourne and experiencing the sun. 6-3, 6-4, 4-6, 6-love for Djokovic. Great mentality there after losing the third set. And again against Daniel Medvedev, who was really making Jolovic, making Djokovic rally quite consistently. Yeah, keep losing my train of thought, and I know I keep talking about the fact I'm tired, but that's basically why. Yeah, so Medvedev came into the match very confident. He made Djokovic play. He probably sapped quite a bit of Djokovic's energy, even though it was only 4 sets and could have been 5. He had the opportunities to make it 5. He was more consistent rallying with Djokovic than I've seen any player ranked that low in a while. So I say that low, but I mean kind of outside the top 10, let's put it that way. So 6-4, 6-7, 6-2, 6-3 for Djokovic. Medvedev actually trailed by a break in that second set, so did really well to turn it around, take the tie break. And he made Djokovic think, he made Djokovic work, and he probably did Djokovic a bit of a favour in the end. Maybe it wouldn't have been so much of a favour if Djokovic had had to work hard in his quarter-final match, but poor Kei Nishikori just didn't have the stamina or the fitness to push Djokovic enough. He'd come through multiple 5-setters to make this stage. He'd come back from the virtual dead against Pablo Carreño Busta to make it into the quarters, and let's hope that poor Carreño Busta did not see that Nishikori withdrew, retired, because the guy was on the brink of that victory and would probably have thrown the kitchen sink at Djokovic. So 6-1, 4-1 Djokovic led when Nishikori was forced to retire with injury. Have to feel for Nishikori, because injuries have been the story of his career, continue to crop up when he most needs a patch of fitness. And I mean, he left everything on the court, so he can be pleased with himself in that respect, but it's never good when injury calls the final result. So yeah, in the end, I think Medvedev did Djokovic a bit of a favour by pushing him in that 4th round, because Djokovic has now been worked in all areas of the court, and he's had the opportunity to get a bit of extra rest with that prematurely ended win over Nishikori. He then gets another day off, obviously, because both men's semi-finals matches aren't played on the same day, and he's going to be quite fresh when he goes in to face Luca Pouille. So, and Pouille, on the other hand, has been run around, pushed around. Now, this is an interesting one to predict. Oh, no, let's look at some of Djokovic's stats. Got to treat everyone the same, even though Nishikori, his numbers really told the tale of this match. 5 winners to 28 unforced errors. There was no point in him continuing to play with those kind of numbers, because clearly he was just not in the state to be doing any damage that given day. Djokovic, 14 winners, 9 unforced errors. It is sometimes hard to focus on your own tennis, your own side of the net, when something's obviously awry on the other side. Won 85% of his first serve, so it's just solid numbers from Djokovic, and that's what he's good at doing, being solid and then really upping his level and coming out with something special when he needs to. So, let's have a look at the head-to-heads. It's non-existent. Djokovic and Pouille never met before, and the obvious thing would be to pick Djokovic to win, but Pouille has defied the odds to get here, and if he hits his serve and his forehand the way he has been doing this tournament against Djokovic, he has serious, legitimate chances. It's going to require a lot of mental strength, because even if he's playing the right game and a good game, we've seen that even when he's 2 sets to love up against any player, he's not secure. So it's got to be something where he's treating every point as if it's the first and last. He's got to be completely invested, completely focused. And it is a big ask. It's doable, but when you look at the fact that it's Novak Djokovic on the other side of the court, it's definitely going to be hard for him. So, I think that Pouille is almost... He's got the more firepower of the 2 players, but does he have the greater consistency? I think that now Djokovic is this deep into the tournament, he's not been the most flashy or the most impressive, but he's definitely one of the most dangerous, and he's been efficient. So, I'm going to call Novak Djokovic to win this match, to the surprise of few, probably. I wouldn't be massively shocked if he was upset, but the sensible thing here is to go with Novak Djokovic for the win, because he could well win the whole tournament, and I predicted him to do so ahead of the event. And I think I'm going to predict Djokovic to do it in... Tempted to predict him to do it in straight sets, but what if Pouille fights as hard as he has been? Let's have a look at those results again. Pouille hasn't won a match in straight sets since the first round. So, he's had a lot of tie breaks. He's come out on the winning side of approximately half of them, maybe just over that. Djokovic to win, and Djokovic to do it in 4 sets. I'm very tempted to say straight sets, but then I think about how he lost a set to Medvedev, he lost a set to Shapovalov. It would be very like Djokovic to tighten the screws, but I've said it now, 4 sets. 4 sets and Djokovic through to take on Rafael Nadal in the final. What a classic final that would be. We can never forget their marathon encounter where they both needed chairs during the post-match interview because they were cramping and they'd left it all on court. But anyway, there you go. 4 semi-finals, previewed, predicted. Gonna have my regrets because I always do. But there you go. I could spend a bit of time answering questions if I can scroll through and see them, but the thing is I don't want the video to be too long. So I might spend a bit of time later answering questions in the comments. Let me know what you think of my predictions, and when this video has been left up on the main channel, when it's processed, when I'm done, go to the comments and let me know what you think will happen in these matches. Leave me your predictions. I saw someone left some predictions on a previous video, had some decent predictions in there, so I'm curious. Let me know what you think, and let me know how wrong you think I am. And thank you for watching. I saw quite a lot of people tuned in today. I think this is probably the highest number of viewers at one time we've had. yeah, around 9 p.m. British time, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. is a decent time. But this should be our second to last Australian Open live stream. I hope to do another one for the final. I can't make promises, but that should be able to happen. And then we'll be back to the usual pre-recorded videos that take ages to upload. Hopefully some roundups, more preview and predictions when we get to the likes of Indian Wells, the Miami Open. So if you don't want to miss out on everything going on here at the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed already. Thank you for those who've regularly attended these live streams. Thank you for your interaction, your encouragement, and for sending in your questions and all of that stuff. Hope you're still enjoying the tennis. For those in awful time zones for everything that's going on, hope you survive. Nearly there. A few more days. 2 more days? 3 more days? I lose track. 3 more days and we're done. And it's been a great tournament, great tennis, phenomenal effort from many of the players. And that's a wrap. There are the 4 semi-finals, previewed, predicted, done. Can't go back on anything now. It's there, it's on the internet. And we'll just have to see what happens. Okay, guys, thank you for watching, and